Hey everybody, it's PartyElite, and today we're taking a look at a very intriguing and gorgeous upcoming RPG that I think you'll be interested in if you're a fan of games like Disco Elysium. While I primarily focus on strategic and tactical games on this channel, there's the occasional immersive sim or text-based RPG that stands out from the crowd and feels like a deep game that has some crossover, and so just like I covered Disco Elysium on the channel, I wanted to highlight Rue Valley as well. The devs invited me to check the game out a little bit ago, so a huge thanks goes out to Emotion Spark Studio and publisher Owlcat Games for sending me a key that let me poke around the game's introduction. If you want to try it out for yourself, the open alpha is available on Steam right now, and just as a reminder, if you like what you see here today, make sure you wishlist the game on Steam. It's a great way to help developers out because of how visibility on Steam works, and I'm sure it's a great motivator for them to see those numbers climb too. Apart from that, as always, don't hesitate to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it. Now, without further ado, and with timestamps down below, let's begin. Personality-based character creation. The first thing that struck me as most compelling here was the character creation system, partly because it's one of the first things you're greeted with, and partly because it's just so different from anything else. I've played plenty of tabletop and CRPG systems, and I'm always looking for fresh takes on the usual set of traits and abilities and skills. Disco Elysium was super interesting in that way, and in some ways, Rue Valley takes it even further, completely setting aside a pure numerical attribute and instead providing you with a selection of sliders that represent either extreme of just a handful of personality traits. Character creation is the crux of a good RPG, and where some focus on physical traits or general capabilities and aptitudes, Rue Valley focuses purely on personality, influencing not how well you can rouse an army or pick a lock, but instead determining if you would attempt such a thing in the first place. This really is about playing a character, warts and all, and if you're at all familiar with the channel, you know that's my favorite part of any RPG, and it's even how I approach non-RPG games. Introducing character flaws as a fundamental part of the approach introduces room for interesting storytelling, hijinks, and drama. In Rue Valley, as you go further and further in one direction or another, for any one of these sliders, you unlock specific traits like being nosy as you become more extroverted, or being reckless if you lean towards a more impulsive character rather than a calculated one. These traits manifest themselves during gameplay by either locking or unlocking various options, and from what I could tell in my short time with the game, these might allow you to gain access to certain important interactions and have a major influence on the story you experience. Not only will you be able to do or not do various things, you'll also have the option to say or not say certain dialogue options, but I do love that the game lets you know exactly what you can't do so that you can choose to come back and re-explore it with a different run, or perhaps at a different time should your character be able to change their personality over time, or under certain circumstances, like, say, becoming an extrovert when drunk. As a quick side note, I also want to mention the status effects that kick in based on your actions. These are also typically described as regular human status effects, a lack of motivation, thirst, and other common, just human statuses that might impact how you go about your day. Even in just this tiny slice of the game, there are a few moments that feel instantly relatable, and I'm really excited to see how the devs push this further. Hilariously, as an example, if you spend too long standing staring out the window at one point, waiting for a receptionist to finish a prolonged phone call, you'll get hit with sore legs that'll slow you down, and it'll take some rest before that status effect is removed. But even something as simple as solving the thirsty status becomes an interesting moment of madness if your character is paranoid or dramatic, worried that the freely available water might be free for some ulterior motive. If something so plain can result in such a curious interaction, I have to wonder what else the devs are cooking up for more complicated emotional, mental, and physical states of being, especially given the slight thriller vibes showcased within this slice of gameplay. The subconscious mind. A big theme in Rue Valley, much like Disco Elysium, seems to be self-discovery and exploration. Whereas the latter has you suffering from a very powerful bout of amnesia, Rue Valley instead puts you in a completely unknowable and ununderstandable set of circumstances and asks you to figure it out, much like therapy might. The story picks up, arguably, in the middle. You're in therapy for something, and the therapist's special method involves residing in this middle-of-nowhere town called Rue Valley. Neither your character nor you know the place, the people, or, in a manner of speaking, why you're even here. While you as the player literally don't know why your character is in therapy, it's not a long shot to imagine that your character is also not sure why he's in therapy. He certainly seems to be questioning it right off the bat, and he doesn't see much value in the process as far as I can tell. What I mean to say is, while a third party who knows the circumstances of his likely court-ordered therapy might be able to easily tell why he should in fact, yes, be in therapy, the fact that he doesn't understand or accept that reason allows us to also be left in the dark, ultimately allowing us to explore this character's psyche and past starting with a blank slate. But naturally, that's not what the character themselves are going to be focusing on primarily. They're going to be thinking about present circumstances. So, at least as far as we can see in the current slice of gameplay, anytime we go to sleep, we get a chance to investigate the character's feelings about the day that just passed. They might reflect on individual people they interacted with, specific events separate from these other characters, and who knows what else. From time to time, these memories will come together to form some kind of conscious thoughts and pursuits, and with enough willpower that you gain over time, you might choose to actually follow up on some of these, and this becomes a way of establishing objectives driven by your own, and ergo your character's, curiosities, all based on recent events that drive them. I wonder how this opens up over time. Is it possible for a player to completely miss certain memories and lines of thinking? Is it possible for the same combination of memories to yield different results and objectives based on character creation or based on decisions made during the formation or recollection of said memories? There's a lot of potential here. Going one step further, literally zooming further in, the player can explore deeper, long-term memories. These are somewhat vague for the most part, at least for starters, though sometimes indicative of what the protagonist is made of or from, and I suspect this is the layer in which you'll get to learn more about your past. Rue Valley, by virtue of its setting and premise, at least what we've seen so far, seems to be about finding yourself, or finding your character. I imagine much of it is also equally about defining yourself, or, again, at least your character, though again, the game is eerily relatable a little too often, perhaps. The character is a blank slate, and your decisions will likely ultimately define their past self to match your playthrough, meaning each playthrough might result in unique outcomes, if not slightly different perceptions of the same outcome. I'm really fascinated by the subject matter here, and though I might be reading too much into it, the idea of therapy works wonderfully into the time loop narrative. You are reliving a short time loop over and over again. At 8 p.m., your waning attention gets drawn back to your ongoing therapy session with the help of an alarm indicating the end of the day's work. You have a brief conversation with a therapist, punctuated by a racket outside, and then one way or another, you make your way to 8:47 p.m. when a bright light ignites the sky, followed by darkness, and a return to that 8 p.m. alarm. Like Groundhog Day, the day's events are all similar with just one variable. You and everything you bring with you, I suppose. Now, your growing collection of experiences will result in different dialogue options opening up and different outcomes too, so naturally the variables grow in number over time, and as you can imagine, it doesn't take much for your character to get swept up in the situation in all the ways you might expect them to. What's going on? Why is it going on? Can it be changed? And perhaps most importantly, can it be escaped? How will you change your approach on a repeat basis? What options will you lock and unlock based on the actions of the prior cycle? Will you be able to cut things off before they happen or otherwise change their outcomes? We already see an example of knowledge from a past loop coming in handy to do some investigation in the current loop. Is that a common part of the gameplay loop and narrative? Do status effects and their removal carry on between cycles? Do you need to set yourself up in certain ways on certain loops to execute certain tasks in a following loop? How do you learn more about the people around you and ultimately yourself? Will you open up more and more in therapy? Will you solve the mystery of that bright light or some of the other guests staying at this motel? As you repeatedly go through the same-ish motions, you'll further develop memories and motivations, and I'm very curious to see where it all goes. As you can see, I have a ton of questions already. The good kind of question. I'm curious. I'm hooked. This is the narrative driving force in the game, of course, so it's only been teased so far, and boy has it been teased well. I said earlier that the time loop narrative fits nicely with the idea of therapy. Well, that's because therapy is often about getting unstuck, and in the case of Rue Valley, you're quite literally stuck. In therapy, in place, in time. And perhaps the only way to get unstuck is to come to terms with yourself, your past, your future, or something else entirely. I don't know, and I guess that's what has me most excited about Rue Valley. It isn't often that a game makes me really step back and wonder what I'm getting myself into, but this short slice of gameplay has done exactly that here, and I cannot wait to learn more and show more off on the channel when the time comes. Rue Valley is a very, very compelling game, even in the short amount of time available to play right now. It has immediately got me hooked and curious about what's to come. It looks absolutely gorgeous with a unique art style of its own, and has a very unique approach to character creation and interaction, while the story and events in this short bit of available gameplay instantly has me itching for more. If you find the game interesting, remember to wishlist it on Steam to support the devs, and if you enjoyed this video, consider hitting the like button. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly, and of course, a big ol' thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.